Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to have a big discussion about slugging in Dead by Daylight. I think there are too many little subtopics in this to make individual videos about. I'd rather just do everything in one comprehensive discussion, so I'll have timestamps below if you want to join the discussion for a particular point of this. But let's just jump right into slugging in DBD in general. Let's start off by just defining it, what it even is. Slugging is when you leave someone on the ground intentionally in order to not have to deal with hooks at a given moment. It's done for a number of reasons, typically to generate pressure, but basically slugging is intentionally leaving someone on the ground to circumvent the standard gameplay loop of Dead by Daylight, which is picking people up after you've downed them and hooking them. Now, there are a number of reasons you would do this. The main reasons I would do it are when people are like grouped up, for example. Think of the scenario as killer. You down somebody and 2 feet away on a generator, there's 2 people working on a generator. Obviously, you're not just going to pick this guy up and go, well, see you later. Good luck on that gen, fellas. Like, you're going to leave that guy on the ground and go pressure these people off the generator. Maybe kick it, maybe hit them, maybe do something to generate some type of pressure, and then maybe you come back and pick up the original guy. In that scenario, it's not a very high-risk maneuver, and it gives you a lot of pressure and a lot of reward. Now, there's a whole subgenre of people that are trying to only slug, and this is a very high-risk, high-reward maneuver. So if you slug at the wrong time, you get nothing. If you were to like slug at the beginning of the match when you don't see anybody else, it's often more detrimental than just regularly picking that person up and hooking them. And that is for a bunch of different reasons, but really the whole point is slugging is a high risk maneuver that only is a benefit if you can snowball off of the results of that slugging play. That's basically what it is. Now, why have people been drawn to that playstyle? The reason is multi-form, I guess. The main one is that it allows you to avoid a lot of second chance effects that survivors might have, namely perks. Things like Decisive Strike, Deliverance, Off the Record, Dead Hard, all of these things are related to specifically being hooked as a survivor. Never hook the survivor, you never have to deal with these perks, and that is one of the main arguments that proponents of this playstyle actually make. At the same time, it's not all black and white. You also don't get to benefit from anything that hooking survivors actually gets you, which is guaranteed progress towards their death. All the perks that are related to hooking, barbecue and chili, friends at the end, pop goes the weasel, pain residence, gift of pain. Like, there's a bunch of perks that are actually pretty damn solid that only happen when you do hook them. Additionally, when you hook somebody, you control where they are, and they are immobile the whole time. So if you've got like a 3-gen and you hook a survivor in the middle of your 3-gen, that is incredibly strong for the killer because you can defend that person, you can defend against people coming to save, and you can defend your generators at the same time. If you slug someone and after 30 seconds they fuck off somewhere, you don't really know where they are anymore. You just have to sort of guess unless you're running Deerstalker, which is eating up a perk slot. So it ends up being a bit of a risk there. So it's not really all black and white. It's not like slugging is this ancient trap card you can pull out where you're like, man, I'm starting to lose this match. I'm going to have to bring out the slugging. It's not like some instant win card. It's only successful when done at the proper time. You can't just do it and win. I see people make this argument a lot, like, oh, you could have won that game if you just slugged and stuff like that. I would have like, no, I had no opportunities to slug there. It's not something that the killer can just decide to do and then just magically benefit from it. It's very often taking advantage of survivors fucking up and grouping up in a scenario. That's when slugging is really strong, but it's honestly a lot on the survivors in that regard. So I don't really see it as this crazy trap card that you can pull out to just instantly win all your matches. But those are the main arguments kind of being made there, that it allows you to circumvent all of the second chance perks that survivors might have. But the thing is, I find this whole central argument weird, and this is the whole argument I want to dismantle. The whole slugging only strategy only arose, and by the way, it's not very prominent. I would say maybe 1 out of 15 of my games I see people doing this. It's not very widespread at all, but this actually centers around the argument I'm trying to make here. The slugging only strategy has arisen to counter anti-tunneling perks, and they are effective at doing so. But the problem is those anti-tunneling perks arose only because killers were tunneling a bunch. So logically, if slugging increased, anti-slugging perks are going to increase at the same rate. Honestly, to even greater effect. Therefore, it's not really the strategy itself that is ultimately strong. It's you taking advantage of people who haven't realized a meta switch might be happening. That's it. A really strong build and a strong playstyle is one that still works even if people know what you're doing. If you put someone on a pain resonance hook or a gift of pain hook or any of these, hooks, it doesn't matter if they know what you're doing. You're still just going to benefit from it. Whereas if you are equipped to deal with the slugging playstyle, it crumbles apart really, really quickly. And so I don't think it's the build itself that's strong. I don't think it's slugging itself specifically in that regard. Slugging situationally is obviously still very strong, but overall, it's mostly not that the build is strong, it's that people haven't adjusted to it yet. And the truth is, anti-slugging perks are more impactful than anti-tunnel perks. So if we see this shift, which inevitably will happen in the same way that anti-tunnel perks became meta, if slugging increases at the same rate, we will see anti-slugging perks arise to counter it. And so we're going to start seeing how strong anti-slugging perks are. And in my opinion, they are vastly stronger than anti-tunnel perks. How do you counter half the anti-tunnel perks in Dead by Daylight? Borrowed time, hit him off the hook. Off the record, hit him off the hook. It's just the same strategy for most of these things. You just hit them off the hook. Dead hard, hit them off the hook. Like, it doesn't matter. You just hit them off the hook, and whatever perk they brought to counter that, it's now gone. The only real exception is something like Decisive Strike, which is a different layer of protection. But even then, it's once per game, goes away in conspicuous actions. So if we look at the things that counter tunneling, or if we look at the things that counter slugging, they are scarier. And in fact, I saw a couple of people in Carnivorous's experiment that encountered people running these builds, and they seemed even more upset about those perks than people that tunnel feel about anti-tunnel perks, because at least you know you can just slap off the record off of someone immediately, you know? If you got something like Unbreakable and it just causes you to lose the game, that's even more frustrating. So people are just trading one frustration for another, and I find that to be such a flaw in the argument. So when I think about anti-slugging perks, no perk in the game has lost me more matches than Unbreakable. Unbreakable is the single greatest anti-pressure perk in the entire game. I cannot think of a single perk that has single-handedly lost me more games than just Unbreakable. And that's just Unbreakable, by the way. There are so many more perks that just completely dismantle slugging, and I've been running them. You really just need We're Gonna Live Forever. That's the main one you need. You can even slap on Made for this if you want double protection. What do we have in that setup now? We basically have old borrowed time. If people aren't going to bother with hooks anymore and they're going to slug, and you slap on Made for this and then We're Gonna Live Forever, you're just basically making old borrowed time where both people get the protection for getting the save. The only reason slugging retains its immense pressure is when people are grouped in the same area. So if you encounter someone going for a save and you're able to, down them right after they get the pickup on somebody else, well, that guy's on the ground now and you're really close to another guy, so that's going to be a problem for them. They're still grouped up. They're still just in a constant cycle of recovery. However, if they have Made for This or We're Gonna Live Forever and you hit them, now suddenly they have time to spread out. You've given them a speed boost. They're going to get 15, 20 seconds of distance on you. They can spread out. You've lost the greatest pressure of slugging, which is people grouped up, by just equipping a single perk. And that is when the whole strategy starts to crumble. And then again, there are things you might not even know about, like Unbreakable, that can completely dismantle it. The whole point I'm trying to make is that the anti-slugging perks are even stronger than the anti-tunneling perks. And when people that do this strategy encounter them, they're even more upset about it. So the whole main central thing I'm trying to say here is the same people will just complain about anti-slugging perks instead. And so there's been absolutely no resolution to the issue whatsoever, except now all you've done is just bore the fuck out of everybody. You've just made the Dead by Daylight community a far less pleasant place to be, and you've accomplished nothing other than winning a few games for a few months until the meta has shifted to completely dismantle what you're doing. That's why I hate this shit so much. It's not that you found this new strong strat. It's that you're just taking advantage of the fact that people haven't adjusted yet. And you know what? It's even easier for these people to adjust because it's not like you need to buy Lori to get Decisive Strike. You don't need to buy these characters to get Off the Record or Deliverance. The strongest anti-slugging perks in the game are free, so you don't even have that excuse that it's like a pay-to-win thing. Unbreakable is from Bill, and that's free. We're Gonna Live Forever is from David, and that's free. So you can obviously throw on other things like Made for This on top of that, Exponential on top of that, to make these things even more impactful. But the truth is, you don't even have to pay a cent to very strongly counter these strategies. Whereas even like, with the whole tunneling thing, you can make the argument, well, some of that's a little pay to win because you got to buy these things. So the Survivor side, you guys can't even make the argument like that because these are free perks. You just get them. You can just level up David, and now you just have that for everybody. And so there's not really any excuse there. Now, I know a lot of people on the casual side of the game will make this argument, well, I don't want to dedicate a full build to anti-tunneling. First of all, you don't have to. Just slap on just Unbreakable. Just Unbreakable can dismantle half the shit that these people are doing. Just We're Gonna Live Forever can dismantle half the shit you're doing. If you want to go hard, you can even do 2. Made for This and We're Gonna Live Forever completely shits on this entire playstyle. If you're playing against this as killer, you're gonna fucking lose if people have this setup. I'm just saying right now. If you tried the pure slug setup and everyone has Made for This, We're Gonna Live Forever, you just lose. You're not gonna win that. So it's the same as if you encounter every anti-tunnel perk in the game and everybody has that, you're just gonna lose as well if you're tunneling. So the whole argument there, you only need 2 perks. You can still have 2 other perks, be whatever you want. But if your whole argument is, well, I want to run my meme, deception, diversion, red herring build, fine, run whatever you want. You bought the game, play however you want. But if you're not really trying to win anymore, you're just trying to do silly shit, that's great. I loved seeing that stuff. But you shouldn't be joining meta balancing discussions anymore. You're not trying to win, so why should your opinion matter on, discussions of balance where we have to talk about people trying to win? I know that might be a bit of a hard pill to swallow, but you can't have it both ways. You can't want to run a meme build and then be upset that you're not being included in the discussion of the meta when you're not willing to win the game. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But there's also the point of, well, okay, the devs saw all this tunneling and they added Basekit Borrowed Time. So logically, shouldn't they add something like a Basekit Unbreakable or a Basekit We're Gonna Live Forever or a Basekit Made for This or a Basekit blah, 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 blah. Any of those things. And I understand that argument. That does make a lot of sense. But my point is, I think slugging is just way riskier than hooking. So it inherently should have less punishment associated with it. So no, I don't think it's a one-to-one comparison with hooks. Just because we have Basekit Borrowed Time doesn't mean we should have Basekit Unbreakable, for example. It's not a one-to-one comparison. Slugging is way riskier. You don't know where the person is. You're not guaranteeing a damaging hook state, which leads to a closer, approach to the end of the game. You're risking a lot more when you do this, so it's not a one-to-one comparison, and I don't think you need that. So I do think that is fine that we don't have any Basekit effect like that. And in fact, when they did the Basekit Unbreakable, it kind of sucked. People were benefiting from Unbreakable when really they shouldn't be doing it. So I don't think that we should have that stuff. Basekit Unbreakable would be too much, in my opinion. I still think there should be a way for survivors to give up. Like, if a killer is intentionally slugging everyone out of spite and just doing a 4-man slug, then I think there still should be that feature I suggested with, the push limits where you can, bleed out 4 times as fast, but you crawl faster, for example. I still think that should be a thing because, yeah, getting bled out for 4 minutes because the killer is just being a little bitch for whatever reason, yeah, that's stupid and that needs to go away as well. That's obviously a problem, but we can handle that in many different ways that don't involve just giving everyone Unbreakable for no real reason. So those are my thoughts on that whole topic. Now, all of this is well and good, but there is one perk that doesn't adhere to any of the things I've been talking about here, and that is the perk Knockout. Knockout makes no sense. I don't know why Knockout exists. Knockout is basically a win more button for killers against solo queue. It does nothing versus the people it needs to do something versus, and so it just makes no sense. So the general overall hierarchy of strength in Dead by Daylight is we have solo queue survivor is the weakest role. Statistically, it's the weakest. Feeling, it's the weakest. On Nightlight, it's the weakest. The highest survivor escape rate is still lower than the lowest killer kill rate. All of this data points towards solo queue being the weakest role in the game. And then we have killer after that. And then we have like 4-man survivor friends probably being the strongest role in the game. That's the general hierarchy of DBD, and we've been trying to even these things out over the years of the game. Knockout, all it does is make the weakest role weaker and does nothing to the strongest role. That's why I'm saying it makes no sense. If you defend Knockout, it is a self-report on your skill level. That is it. It means that you need help beating the weakest role in the game because that's the only people it actually punishes. It doesn't help against people that you actually need perks to help with, which is, strong survive with friends teams. That's when it's hard to win as killer. Just, Johnny Meg with 20 hours in the game, the chance of getting 4 very good survivors with no weak link in solo queue is so low. That is why statistically the game says that solo queue is the weakest role in the game. So the fact that Knockout exists only to make solo queue worse because it makes you not able to see the auras of your downed teammates unless you're close to them, which is something communications on Discord, for example, completely circumvents, is why the perk makes no sense. There is no defending the design of Knockout. Fuck it, buff it, I don't care. Give it even more anti-slug effects. Just remove the communication aspect to it. It doesn't make any sense. And if you're defending Knockout, you are just a scrub. I don't know how to be nicer about that. It is literally you're just being a fucking scrub that wants to win against the weakest role even more. You should be worried about the strongest role beating you and having perks to deal with that, and that's a discussion I'm willing to have. But we need to be doing this with the balance, not this. It makes no sense. So knockout is an anomaly that makes no sense. You could even make a little bit of an argument for the third seal as well, but that's far less impactful in my opinion. So overall, those are all of the main arguments about slugging. To summarize, slugging at the right time is a very effective strategy. Doing only slugging is an effective strategy for now until people adjust to it and realize that the anti-slugging perks are even stronger than the anti-tunneler perks, and all we've done is make the game a more miserable place until you realize that. So I guess as killer, if you want to do that, trade a couple of months of cheap wins for the misery of everyone you go against until eventually the misery shifts back on you and now you got to deal with all this anti-slug shit. I mean, you do whatever you want, but that's why I'm so staunchly against this whole playstyle. That's why I feel like it's such a plague on the game, because it's not even good. It's only good because people haven't adjusted for it yet, and it's easy to adjust because half the perks that do counter it are just straight up free. So that's why I'm so against it. That's why I'm against that whole pure slugging strat in general, but I'm not really against any other forms of slugging. I'm all for it. I think a lot of the time slugging is just something that survivors put themselves in a position for it to be beneficial. As soon as it becomes non-beneficial for the killer to do it, slugging will decrease. That's why we will see far less of the pure slugging playstyle, and we'll really only see it when it's mostly up to the survivors kind of fucking up and grouping up in the same area. So that's my whole point. Those are all the discussions about slugging I wanted to have. I'm curious to hear what you guys think about all this stuff. I'm sorry for rambling for a little bit, but it is definitely a topic that has been discussed since the game has kind of came out, and it is an interesting dance between people countering metas at any given time. So those are my thoughts. Curious to hear what you guys think. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching this whole video, and I will see you next time.